All right, everybody, welcome tonight to our spinal workshop Tuesday. Thank you all for being here. So tonight's going to be a little bit different. We talked about last week, we mentioned that we were going to talk about the history of chiropractic. So this one to me is one of my favorites because I get to talk about what I love to do. And I hope that that's something that may inspire everybody else too. Just to remember, hopefully you do or did work in an environment that it's truly what you love doing. And my grandma always said, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. So I don't work hard. I play hard. So which I love to do. So tonight for chiropractic history, I thought it'd be good to start with my own history. But before I start on history, I'm going to talk about just what we call our statement of desire. So one of the things that we do in this office is gas cards, and our gas cards are something that we do every day to talk about. So GAS is for gratitude, A is for action, and S is for a service. And so we write down either on a card or we do it digitally on these cool little things that you can make pictures and all that kind of stuff with too, that we write down 3 to 7 things that we are grateful for every day. And I think that's a wonderful way to start out your day. So gratitude in mind always helps. So we do those. And then we put in there, what are our actions for the day? What are our intentions? What do we plan to get done? Not just like picking up the dry cleaning if you had that or anything, or that we're going to pick up the trash or whatever, but things like intentional actions. What's an action that you want to accomplish in that day? And then the service is a secret service. Ideally, something that you're doing for someone else without them knowing it. It doesn't have to be something costly. It can be like, smile at a stranger. Or it could be something that, hey, you pay at the drive-through for the one behind you, or something of that nature that's just a random act of kindness, basically. But it can be simple, like I said, just simply smiling at people, just going to smile more today, those kind of things. But another thing that we add on that is what's called our statement of desire. And that's kind of like our individual or personal, somewhat mission statement for those that are in the business world and know that kind of realm. But if you're not, and you're like, oh, what is that about? Really just something to kind of state, what is it that makes you tick? What is it that is your purpose in life? What do you feel is why you're here and what drives you? That kind of thing. So my statement of desire is embrace family connections. And it's important to me because, well, embrace is important because I'm kinesthetic. I like touch. So I describe things in that manner. I describe them to where you could literally, feel that. So visual is another part of that. But family is extremely important to me, always has been. Grew up in a family, close family. We did things together all the time. My brother and I were never left with babysitters more than less than a handful of times that I can ever recall. And so we just always did stuff. We went camping together. Then we rodeoed. When we were rodeoing, we're going all the time, every weekend somewhere, all that kind of stuff. So just growing up in that environment, family is very, very important to me. And connections is important because it's important to have that connection. We require that. And one of our workshops that we talk about is isolation. We did that several weeks ago and talking about how important that as the human body that connections are. And so we need to reach out to people if we haven't seen them in a while, we hadn't heard from them in a while, reach out to them, check on them. It's important. So to go along with that then, to say my chiropractic history involves my family. Of course, imagine that. So it's actually kind of my brother's story, but because my brother and I both are chiropractors, it's both of our chiropractic stories. How did this happen? So when people ask you, how'd you get started in this? Kind of a long story, but I'll keep it kind of short. So we went to chiropractic when we were little, in the sense of my brother had an issue where he would faint. He would just pass out. We started correlating it with when he got hot. It seemed to be the kind of things that threw that off. One year, these particular incidences happened kind of fairly close together. He was playing basketball. He just passed out on the court. Basketball coach wouldn't let him play anymore because it freaked him out. So then the next one was a field trip. Took a field trip to the newspaper, and at the newspaper, it was, field trip. It was in the warmer part of the year. And you go into the basement where all the presses are, and it's hot. So he passed out. So we thought that it had accumulated it, and, thinking about it, had something to do with the heat. The last time that he did in that little spell was at a wedding. The girl that worked with my dad at the bank, we were at her wedding. It was a summer wedding, outdoor wedding. We were sitting in chairs, and all of a sudden, he's not in his chair. So in the middle of a wedding, we get to pull in an ambulance, and I'm like, well, sorry. So we talked to family and friends and all. And so he had a heart issue when he was little, and he'd had open heart surgery at the age of 5. So we, of course, immediately think that it has something to do with that. So we go back to the cardiologist, and they get him all checked out and find out it's not his heart. Everything's doing good. Nothing's wrong there. At this point, he's like 11, 12-ish. And so my mom's aunt was seeing a chiropractor, and she suggested we take him to a chiropractor that maybe he had a pinched nerve. So lo and behold, we go to the chiropractor. Guess what he finds? He has a pinched nerve in his neck. So that was what they called it at the time. And then that particular doctor, so that's what we call subluxation. He had subluxation that was causing him to just have spells where he'd, obviously it must have had more to do with like he would turn a certain way or something that did that. It had nothing to do with the heat. That was just what we were trying to assume. So that started us. So we went to that chiropractor. Then we found one that was closer to home, trying to go that one. Neither one really taught us on the importance of the continuity of it. So it was we fixed this problem. He quit passing out. Great. So what do we do now? Well, just wait till, he starts passing out again. Well, we start rodeoing. So by that time we're into rodeo. And so we rodeoing all the time. And he never had that happen again, but of course had other wrecks. So we went to the other chiropractor anytime that we had a wreck. Unfortunately, we didn't have wrecks a lot, so that was great. But again, he didn't educate us on the importance of continuity of care. So fast forward then to college, Brett gets a rodeo scholarship to UT Martin. And during that course of care in the first year, gets his knees blown out due to wrecks with horses. And the last one was coming out. He gets fouled on the chute gate, gets thrown, and his leg just completely is flopping sideways. So they take him to the hospital. And so they do that, and he has to have some surgery. They do rehab. And in rehab, with being part of the rodeo team, you had the school there had a PT and a chiro that was helping out the rodeo team. And so the chiropractor asked him, he said, what do you plan to do with the rest of your life? Because obviously it's not this. So this is not going to be it. So he talked to him about chiropractic and how you can be a doctor, you can support your rodeo habit, you can do these things, but you don't have to deal with blood and guts. Sounded pretty enticing. So Brett's like, yeah, sure, let's give it a shot. So he goes to Palmer, calls me and says, this is really where you want to be. I thought I wanted to do physical therapy. All I knew is I wanted to help people using my hands. So at that time, I had just gotten in my undergrad hours, which at the time you only needed 90 hours undergrad. It's about 3 years. Now it's a full 120. And so I was able to go in there before, right along behind him, which was great. So that's kind of how all that part played out. So a little bit about history. We went to Palmer Chiropractic College, which is what they call the Fountainhead. That is where it started. And it's named Palmer Chiropractic College because of D.D. Palmer. So D.D. Palmer was the founder of chiropractic. And in 1895, he performed the first adjustment. And that was on a man named Harvey Lillard. And Harvey Lillard was deaf. And Harvey Lillard was the janitor in Dr. D.D. Palmer's clinic there, and he had a big building there on the corner of 2nd Avenue and Brady Street in Davenport. And at the time, Dr. D.D. Palmer was a magnetic healer, so he was doing a lot of research with how the body has positive and negatively charged ions inside of it, and use a magnet to move that around. You can help to increase blood circulation and what that does, and that helps to move fluid, and that helps to decrease inflammation. And all those things are still true today. And he was doing a lot of research with that. And in that process of researching that, he was realizing that maybe there's more to it, and maybe there's something else that could be done than just using magnets. And that's when he was really visualizing the structure. He had models. He had a lot of different things. He did a lot with that kind of stuff as well. And really started to contemplate, what if these things that we do every day and falls that we have misalign the vertebrae that puts pressure on a nerve, and could that be where a lot of this other stuff was happening? And so he asked Harvey, because though he was deaf, he could read lips because he hadn't been deaf his whole life, and he asked him, when did he lose his hearing and what happened? And like I said, he was a janitor, and he said he was working one night, bent over, felt something pop, and then he couldn't hear anymore. So he asked him if he would mind if he laid down and tried something. So he had a table similar to one Amy's on. They were not quite they didn't have the segments. It was just all flat, and just a space in the middle there for the nose. So he laid him down and he gave him his first adjustment, and lo and behold, Harvey Lillard could hear again. So D.D. Palmer took that to think, oh, we can cure deafness. So he plastered newspapers and got it all over everywhere that, everybody that's deaf, chiropractic, this thing that he's done, it can heal deafness, which was a horrible thing to say and a horrible thing to do, which cost him a lot because then everybody thinks he's crazy, weird guy, because that was not it. It just so happened that the reason that Harvey was deaf was because of a nerve impingement, and so it did restore his hearing. And so therein lies the first chiropractic adjustment, 1895. In 1897, then he started the Palmer School of Chiropractic and started to teach other people what this was and what he had discovered and how to remove these intersegmental issues, these subluxations that we call them now. And we came up with that word chiropractic because as he looked in Greek and he did a lot of studying and a lot of different things. And of course, back in then those days, Latin was big as well. But done by hand is what chiropractic means. So chiro is hand and praktos in Greek is done. So basically chiropractic means done by hand. So philosophically, there are some chiros that really take that to the limit and say that that's the only way that chiropractic should be and anything else is not chiropractic. And I'm one of those that is kind of on that line that I like to stick to that, to stick to my roots. That I want to, like I said, my goal in life always, and I don't know where it came from, was just that I knew I wanted to help people using my hands. No drugs, no surgery, all of that. And so I'm very adamant about the adjustments that I do are done by hand. I don't use an instrument. Not that I don't think they're helpful. They're just not what I like to do. And to me, they're not chiropractic. Something a chiropractor can use, absolutely. It's another tool in the toolbox, for sure. So 1897, like I said, the School of Chiropractic medicine was developed, and at that time most of them had a high school diploma, but some of them might not even have had that because some of them that wasn't even a thing. So you're talking about a high school level education and then chiropractic school. And at the time that it started, it wasn't very long either. It was like a year worth of doing some training, and a lot of it was more hands-on stuff than it was clinical work either, because again, what is there? There's no books. That hadn't been developed. So schooling was pretty slim at that time. In 1974 is when it became accredited, and the accreditation is the Council on Chiropractic Education got formed and started accrediting the school, and so that we could start to have recognition as far as standardization of those things. And will you get that thing that's the frame that's on the front by the wall that shows the hours? I meant to grab that. Yep. So in 1996, which is not all that long ago, the National Institute of Health started funding research that really has helped tremendously in upping the game on what all chiropractors really know how to do and such. And so this that hangs up by the front door there, some of you may have seen it in our office, is the minimum class hours. So a lot of times people will think about chiropractic and not realize that we're real doctors. People say, I want to go see a real doctor. I'm like, okay, I have a doctorate of chiropractic, and the doctorate of chiropractic is, we've had classes in anatomy, physiology, pathology, chemistry, bacteriology, and bacterial epidemiology, diagnosis, neurology, x-rays, psychiatry, OBGYN, obstetrics and such, and orthopedics. So those are all the same subject matters of the medical doctor that a chiropractor has. And in every single one of those hours with the medical doctor and the chiropractic hours on everything except the pathology, because with the pathology part, we're not dealing with doing anything with that. So your pathologies, we can diagnose them, we can find those things, but again, we're not treating that. And so pharmacology is the other part of that. We don't take that because we don't do drugs. And we can't prescribe them either. But every other class hours that you see in here are hours either match or exceed what a medical doctor has. And so that's where that accreditation came in, starting to see the importance of number of hours that we need to see. What is it that we're doing? So learning the anatomy, physiology is extremely important. That's one of the top-notch parts of that, and that's what has probably gotten me in the most discussions with other professions is the neurology. Even neurologists. I've sat knee to knee with Vanderbilt's head of neurology and basically called him a quack. Nicely. I did it nicely. But went over, I was very tactful about it, asking him the understanding of neurology post a stroke. So when my dad had a stroke, there was a lot of things that I wanted to do that he didn't understand why I was asking to do that. And I said, I don't know where you got your degree. I really don't care. I want you to understand, like, neurology is neurology. It doesn't change on anybody. It is what it is. The nerves are what they are, and they go where they go. So it's important to know the background on where did this come from, that as far back, like I said, 1895, farther than that, go back to 400 BC, Hippocrates said, look well to the spine for the cause of disease. Man, if he'd have run with that, instead of all the other things he did, herbal things that were then turned into pharmacology, so the first of medicine. The first thing as far as medicine, if it had been the natural stuff and stuck with the spine and we'd had chiropractic at 500 BC, instead, the world would be a little bit different. It'd be a lot different. And so history-wise, some of the first state to actually license chiropractors was Kansas, and that wasn't until 1913. So up until then, chiropractors didn't have a license. They had a degree from this Palmer School of Chiropractic, but again, there wasn't a whole lot with that, and there was certainly no accreditation at that time. And so what was happening, those early chiropractors were getting jailed many times because they were being considered practicing medicine without a license, because there wasn't anything for this chiropractic thing that they said they were doing, and all that anybody else knew was that people were getting better and medical doctors were getting pissed. Their patients weren't needing them. They were going other places, and they were not happy about it. So the AMA, the American Medical Association, which existed then as well, started a lawsuit, and basically, again, dealing with practicing without a license. And so that took a long time. But 1987, finally, a Wilkes versus the American Medical Association, the AMA, was the tip of the greatness for things to turn around for chiropractic. And it was about the unlawful conspiracy in restraint of trade is basically what finally got that turned around, is that they could no longer blatantly out and out bash and talk about chiropractic not being a profession. But again, that was 1987. It's a whole long time. That's 100 years past when it started, right? So it was a long, long time of a fight and a battle. So there was a lot of chiropractors that did. They went to jail, and Dee went to jail. His son, BJ, went to jail. Several, and I can't remember, there was another doctor, I can't remember his name or how many times, but he got jailed ridiculous number of times for practicing medicine without a license. And the thing of it was just the issue that there was no license to take, right? There wasn't a chiropractic license, so they couldn't take it away from them. So they spent their time in jail. They got out. Guess what they did? Went back to practice. Some of them practiced while in jail. They adjusted the others that were in jail. They adjusted the jailer. They did their thing. They talked their talk and walked their walk. And so that was the foundation that we started with. And then, like I said, we start seeing the licensing start to happen in 1913, and Kansas being the first state. Today, there are 50 states and over 40 countries who have licensed doctors of chiropractic and that recognize that. Currently, we have over 70,000 doctors of chiropractic in the U.S. And of that, when I looked up and I said, well, that basically estimates that the research right now is there's 35 million people that visit a chiropractor each year. And if I find my little paper from a while ago, one of our other workshops that we were talking about, I said there's 82 billion people in the world. Only 35 million of them have seen a chiropractor in the past year. Doesn't mean they're even on consistent care. So in my opinion, we're still largely underutilized, and largely because chiropractors themselves are not teaching chiropractic well enough to their patients to understand why should everybody in their entire family be under chiropractic care, and that we should be screaming over the rooftops of why we should be under chiropractic care, and not that the other stuff doesn't exist or that it doesn't need to be there. It absolutely does. It just doesn't need to be for every runny nose. And that's what's happened, is that we just haven't learned those things in that manner. So they used to in the early years, D.D. Palmer and BJ as well did a lot of education, because of course it was new. So they had people in their homes every night. They had what we call fireside chats, and they just talked about the philosophy that was involved, the idea, the concept of the power that made the body heals the body. Nope, it's out.
Yeah, it just went out. Apparently somebody just-
Yay, thank you for watching that, Amy. You're great. You're plugged up tonight. Alright, we're green. Here we go. Thank you, whoever commented on that. See, that's why we got to have people. Huh?
Miss Downing.
Yay, thank you, Downing. So, Dee Dee Palmer's son, BJ, also became a chiropractor. Then BJ's wife, Mabel, was the first woman chiropractor. And like I said, BJ took over the school in 1906. And BJ was more so Dee Dee was the founder, they called him. BJ was the developer. BJ took it and he traveled a lot. He went all around the world. He also was a fanatic of the circus. He loved the circus. So back then, Barnum and Bailey was a thing even then. And Barnum and Bailey Circus would vacation on the off season in Florida. And BJ bought a house in the same place there in Sarasota. And that house still exists, and it's still a kind of museum. You can go there and stay there and see the things of BJ's. And we did that several years ago. It was very interesting. But he did. He would travel down there and stay, and he would adjust all of the circus performers as well as the animals. So that's a fun fact as well, that animal chiropractic has been started since the beginning of chiropractic. So we've been on the fight. Those of you that have helped me this past year with session and calling your legislators and all and working with the animal chiropractic bill, we kept trying to say, like, this is nothing new. Our profession has been doing this literally since its existence. And so it's very, very, very important and part of what we do. So Mabel being the first woman chiropractor, I thought it'd be neat to see, well, where are we at now? So from 1991, we went from, there was 87% of the chiropractors were male and only 13% were female. And at 2019, we're about 60-40. We're at 70 nearly, 70-30, 67% male, 32% female in 2019. Statistically, I've seen in the last few classes that that's even rising even more, that more and more women are getting into chiropractic as well, and that's a wonderful thing. It's an either or. I don't care who it is, honestly. Everybody and anybody can do that, so you need, just putting that out there. All the little kids that I see, I'm like, you're our future chiropractor. I plant that in their heads, that it's the best job in the world because we get to help people. We're not putting anything in their body that doesn't already exist. The energy that's there, we're just unleashing that so that your body can do what it was designed to do, which is heal itself. And that's one of my favorite things, to help people to realize how wonderfully and fearfully that we are made, that we get to talk about that all the time. That's the other aspect that is also great. You get to talk about, if you're a faith-based individual, you get to talk about that at work all day long. And watch it in action. Watch those miracles happen. Miracles still happen every day. If you open your eyes and see them, if you're looking for them, you can find them for sure. So chiropractic and where it came from and where we're at, very, very important. It's an important aspect, I think, to me. I think there's a lot of chiropractors even today in the young generations that are graduating from particular schools that weren't Palmer, so they don't necessarily learn all the history. They don't necessarily even know all the great details of things that happened, and it's a very small portion of their curriculum. And so a lot of them are not being raised up and knowing really where they even came from. Some of them are going to school because they couldn't get into medical school, and it's a backup plan and that type of thing, and not really knowing what it is. So I wanted everyone here to know the basis behind the chiropractic foundation and how long that it has been in place and what's taken place in order to get there. So there's about 20 chiropractic colleges, which kind of even floors me because you don't hear about them, some of them. They're very, very small. And the list that I pulled up was like, well, I know there's another one. There's one in Kentucky that I can't tell you the name of it, but one of my fellow colleagues that I graduated with is actually the dean over it. It's bad that I can't tell you what the name of it is, right? But I know that it exists. And so the major ones, Palmer, of course, that started it. Then Life University, because one of the guys that went to Palmer that got mad about something and decided, you know how stuff works like that, separate out and I'm going to do my own thing. So Life University and Logan College, because there was a guy who just basically came up with another type of a technique, and so it's Logan Basic, and so Logan was his name, so it's Logan Chiropractic College, and that's in St. Louis, Missouri. Those are kind of our three major runners most of the time. Parker out in Texas, and that's where I did my animal chiropractic course. And then Sherman Chiropractic College in South Carolina. Those are kind of like the major players and have been for a while. Sherman was really underrated for a really long time, and it's grown a lot in the last several years. But in 2019, they did a survey of chiropractors, and at that point, is 25% were Palmer, 14% from Life, 12% from Logan, and 8% from National, which National is one that's around Northern Illinois. And when you get into chiropractic, you start to determine, like, where do you want to go to school, and it has a lot to do with when you start checking them out. You find out what their philosophies are, what their base is, what do they like to teach, what's it like, and you find there are some that are largely medical sided, and then there's some that are very, very more strict chiropractic work, and so that is why they're all different, and so important to be looking at those things. So just as a history and history of the thing, at the beginning, it strictly was Palmer. For many, many years, and now we have a Palmer West, and we have a Palmer Florida, and there's I think there's 4. I think the Palmer Florida is in Orange Beach or something. So some go down there, and I'm like, I need no distractions to learn that stuff. Okay, so you're literally talking. I don't know what that number was. I forgot to say on the bottom of it. It's 2,600 hours worth of coursework. It's over 4,200 hours worth of instructional work in there, and so it's a lot of time, and to put in that time and effort is something that to just be acknowledged. So basically, in a roundabout way, that is the history of chiropractic as far as when did it start, where are we at now. The future of it, I hope, is bright. We had our chiropractic seminar this weekend at Southern Chiropractic Conference that the Tennessee Chiropractic Association puts on, and here in Murfreesboro, and we had right at 500, I think, over 500 attendees, just a little bit over. But the state of Tennessee, we have 1,500 chiropractors. Only a third of them were there. Like, you got to get your continuing ed somewhere, and you can't get it all online. You can only get 6 hours online. So there's multiple ways in which to get continuing ed, of course, as far as conferences and such. And I just believe highly in supporting our state organization, so I talk to a lot of people about doing that a lot, and it does help that I am secretary of the state association, that I'm pushing that, but I've pushed that ever since I graduated. Being part of your state association is important, so I push that a lot as well. So history of chiropractic, like I said, 1895, first adjustment on a deaf man who restored his hearing, but that's not where it ends. There are miracles like that happening every day. Whether it's an infant that doesn't latch and they can get an adjustment, and they do, or it's an infant that doesn't sleep. So yes, infant adjusting is extremely important. More so than that, a mom who can't put her babies to bed because she can't kneel down. Those are life-changing things that we deal with every day that are, impossible without better nerve flow. So if you know somebody in your family that is suffering from anything, and it doesn't have to be pain, their quality of life is not what it should be, and they think it's because of their age, and most of the time it's not. It has nothing to do with the age. It has everything to do with the miles, and there are ways that we can even work with those as well. So helping people to see where they're at and take them to a better place is always our benefit, and we try really hard to help with that. Next week our talk is going to be on posture. That's awesome. So posture is the window to the spine. Those of you that still have re-exams coming up this month, posture is the window to your spine. There's a gimme there. Posture is the window to our spine. We're going to be talking about posture next week and help everybody to make sure we're doing posture checks on our families, posture checks on ourselves. Make sure you've got somebody checking your posture. If you're not in here often enough, find somebody that can do that, and we're going to talk about how to do that so that you can help yourself the most. So again, thank you very much for being here tonight. Appreciate you guys, and we'll see you next week to talk about posture. All right. Thank you again, Downing, for being on there to tell us we were losing sound.